All right. So that's a really nice start for EnTaroAdun. Both a strong forest bird and a strong wetland bird, which is certainly what you want to see at the start of a game. So yeah, I think that's kind of a no-brainer for them. None of the others are really worth keeping. So I think you get both of those down, and yeah, you can start digging for cards and try to add to that.
Yeah, pretty well no-brainer. I might. What do you think about the planning to pick up the warbler on the first move, knowing that you've got the white start and planning on, because that's a bird. I mean, granted, it's probably not something where you're at huge risk of it being picked up. But that seems, with a bird like the white start or the gnatcatcher, where you start to get those free grubs, those birds like the warbler become a lot more potent for you.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like you say, if you're able to get the exact food for that without even really trying on the white start, then it's a strong option. It's normally not a bird that you look to play early on, so I don't know. I think in this position, I probably would still rather dig from the deck and try and get something that, strong brown power or something that's really going to help build up a nice grasslands engine as the game goes on. But yeah, I think certainly those first two birds in the starting hand was a no-brainer. Really, you get both those down pretty quickly. But yeah, would be interesting to see if they do go for the warbler or not. But yeah, we have some nice options, I think, as well in June's hand. Certainly, the Merganser and the Canvasback are both really nice wetland birds. Maybe not such a strong start in the forest. The Jay can potentially work. It looks like they might be going for that, but it's quite an expensive bird to try and get down early in the game. So it's a bit of a risk. But then again, if it's your best option, it still isn't terrible, and you can look to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're looking at, right, they keep that food, then their first move has got to be to take that extra wheat that's in the feeder to make sure that they can get that Jay down. But then, of course, they're not going to be able to use that Jay's power for a little bit. So it's just kind of an unfortunate, forest start for them.
Yeah, I think unfortunate is the right word. Like you say, you take the seed to play it, but then you can't use it. So it'll take a couple of turns to get through that bird feeder and reset, by which point you've probably had to take food that you don't really want or need at this point. Certainly, I think, you want to get them against a down and try and dig. I mean, you could always even just leave the J completely. I think if you do have that Merganser and you're able to see 3 or 4 cards a turn, particularly if you keep the extra food instead of the J, it just gives you more chances of seeing a good forest bird. Maybe you're able to draw a nuthatch or something like that, and get that down. But yeah, maybe they've got half an armor bonus card as well. But certainly, this Stella's J at the start is a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and especially because they've got a third food that they would have to spend to use it, and there's only one grub in the feeder as well. So it's like they're really putting their Merganser at risk with the J move. So it's just really a kind of unfortunate kind of combination of birds there.
Yeah, it's a good point actually. Even if you do take the seed and get the J down, you're going to have to spend one of those foods that you would have used for the Merganser. So, yeah, I don't know. In some ways, it's a safe play keeping the J because you at least have something to get in that forest. But in other ways, it feels like the risky play because if you did get the Merganser down and just start digging through the deck, you give yourself every chance of drawing a decent forest bird within at least a few turns. So yeah, certainly it's not an awful start, but I think EnTaroAdun is looking stronger, certainly with the setup that they've got.
Yeah, I mean,
they're able to get these down pretty quickly at the start of the game.
Yeah, Jay's basically got June. Okay, so maybe June is gonna try a combination of things there where they see if they can get a cheaper bird and
yeah, it's not bad. The longer I think the longer they leave that seed untouched in the feeder, the more risky it becomes, because if EnTaroAdun goes and takes that seed, the J is basically completely off the table. There's no way you're going to get that down soon enough. They could, still, if they do get a nicer forest bird like a nuthatch or something, you can always discard that J for the extra food as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's odd keeping the J if you were just going to play the Merganser first anyway, because to me this kind of signals that they're already going to start digging through the deck and see if they can get something better. It feels like the J is just going to be too slow at this point to get it down.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel? Okay, in a situation like this, I mean, classically, I know you want to when you have one bird down in the wetland, you want to get lay eggs so that you can get that third card. But when you have a bird like the Merganser, where you're going to be looking at 3 cards anyway, and the card in your hand is bad, don't you want to start looking already?
I do, yeah. This can be a bit of a controversial topic. I think normally you prefer to lay eggs and then draw, because you can get the extra card. But I think with something like the Merganser, where you're drawing 2 and discarding 1, I think you're actually better just drawing without laying eggs. If you lay eggs and draw cards twice, discarding the egg, you've seen 8 cards and you've kept 6 of them. If you draw cards 3 times, you've seen 9 cards and you've kept 6 of them. So you're having the same number of cards at the end of that sequence, but you've seen 1 more. So I always feel like that's a strong position, and certainly in a position like this where you're looking for a forest bird. You don't need eggs to get that down. Sometimes you want to have laid eggs before, so that, okay, if I draw a nice bird to add to this in the wetlands, then you can do that without losing tempo and having to lay eggs in between. But yeah, I would absolutely be doing what June's doing here. Start digging through the deck, and hope you can get something better. You don't need to have laid eggs first.
Okay, now the
nuthatch is an interesting one. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I think it's a potential goer if they do have good access to cards, but never mind, because they've just completely ditched it. So
yeah, my thoughts on that are a moot point at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I can only assume that getting rid of that means they're just going to try and keep digging, because certainly that was probably the best forest option of all those they had in their hands. So I think to leave it really signals that you're willing to take that risk. Interesting from EnTaroAdun, they have gone with the point you were making before about jumping on that warbler. Having the easy access to the worms from the white start. So yeah, I think that's an interesting play. It's very aggressive to go for it before getting the white start down, but it's a big point bird, and they're easily going to get the food for that. Yeah,
no, I wonder why they kept the eastern bluebird over the Savannah sparrow, because the Savannah sparrow is it's 2 fewer points, but it's 1 cheaper food. And it's a food you're guaranteed to have. Plus, it does you better for the second end of round. So I'm a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah. Bluebird is interesting. Like you say, you could have looked to keep the sparrow, and then maybe you get that alongside the warbler. I think they'd have enough food for that. If they play the white start now, and then draw food, that would give them enough to do that double play in the grasslands now if they wanted. So that would help them, not just for this end of round goal with the total birds, but like you say, it's got that ground nest as well, and that's going to be nice for end of round 2. So. Yeah, Bluebird, certainly an odd choice to keep that here. But maybe they're going to think of getting that down instead. But I think the Sparrow is probably the best choice.
Yeah, and the Bluebird does offer, what is it, 2 or 3 additional egg spaces, but I don't think that's really an issue anytime soon. So
no. If that's the start of your grasslands, you're not going to be activating that a whole lot. So I don't particularly think they need to worry about filling up on egg spaces at the moment. But it might be something they have to consider in the future. But this is interesting from June. Going for the heron in the this early in the game. What is that something you'd look to go for normally at this point of the game?
Well, I mean, they are in a position where they're because of the Merganser, they're able to see a lot of cards. So it's not, I think the opportunity cost is much lower versus where you can grab that and kind of, because that's a much better bird for later in the game once you've got an established food engine. So I don't know. I don't mind it. Plus they've got that flicker presumably to kind of get that down and start gaining some food. They could have used that red-bellied woodpecker a couple turns ago.
Yeah, I think it's slightly unfortunate, and it's kind of benefit of hindsight and everything. But if they hadn't taken that heron, the woodpecker's the one from the top of the deck they would have taken instead. And yeah, I think if they had got the woodpecker now, they've already got the seed. You can get that down, and suddenly you're able to get 3 food a turn if you're discarding cards as well. So that just puts them in a much stronger position. And yeah, with EnTaroAdun going for food and taking that grub, I think the flicker is not an option at the moment, so I think they might have to go for cards yet again and get that woodpecker, because really that's their only option for something in the forest.
Yeah, and then at that point, I mean that's a lot of card taking. You're really hoping for a tuck and draw bird, even more than you always are, just to be able to kind of churn some of these cards around.
Yeah, I think it's always a gamble like this if you do draw lots of cards, because you can end up drawing lots that you're not going to use. You do, like you say, you want something that, like a tuck and draw or a tuck and lay, or just something that's able to convert those extra cards into something, because if those cards are sat in your hand at the end of the game, they're not going to get you any points, and it feels like a bit of a waste. And yeah, certainly a lot more efficient start, I feel, for EnTaroAdun. They've got birds they want to play. They've got strong birds in the forest and in the wetlands, which is what you want. And yeah, June, 5 turns in, the Mergansers are all they've got to show for it. It does feel a little bit slow, but hopefully at least, if they can get this woodpecker down now, they can start, getting more food and hopefully get some of these big point birds down.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about tempo, and it's not. I think that June has made any blunders. It's just unfortunate they have no tempo right now. It's really slow with the card draws that they've been getting.
Yeah, I think if they'd got a nicer bird earlier on, they could have, really had a quicker start. It has been unfortunate. Interesting for EnTaroAdun though, they've just picked up the Phoebe, so normally a really strong bird to get down. It's just one of those at this point. You look at your own board and you think, I've got lots of access to food, and you look at your opponent's board and think they haven't got much access to food at all. Not traditionally the scenario in which you would start throwing around food. So maybe if this woodpecker goes down, that might be the signal to play the Phoebe as well. But yeah, be interested to see how EnTaroAdun does look to play this at the moment.
Sure, but even there, I mean, sure, the woodpecker does maybe have some influence over the decision, but I think you always want to look at relative strengths and weaknesses. And so, not only is it that your opponent, that June, is weak on food, they're all or weaker than you on food. They're also stronger than you on cards. And anytime your opponent has an ability to generate cards more quickly than you. You want to be cautious about feeding them too much.
Yeah, very good point. You want to always be paying attention to your opponent. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? Am I helping them in an area that they're weak? Am I helping supplement something that they're strong in? You make a really good point. Their card draw is so strong. I mean, we can see some of the birds in their hands already. Big point birds that are going to eat those grubs. So I think just kind of looking at what EnTaroAdun's done on their last turn, to me it kind of suggests they're going to go for the warbler in the forest. At least, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd lay eggs now if you were planning on playing something in the grasslands on this turn, and they've got the food for it and the eggs. So I wonder if they're kind of putting off that decision on the Phoebe at least for now, and just avoiding giving as many of the free grubs as possible to their opponent.
Yeah, now June, there is a wheat in the feeder, so That's good, and they'll be able to kind of cycle the cycle the feeder quickly here, which is good. You have to figure they're looking to pick up a rodent maybe, so they can drop that kite, maybe drop that falcon. Yeah. Oh, there's two rodents. Okay, I missed that.
Yeah, they took one before discarding, so
gotcha.
They've got the option of getting the that hunting bird. I'm completely blanking on the name in the grasslands, but yeah, I think certainly the kite. You kind of want that second forest bird to at least help you get more food quicker. But I don't know. The longer they go with all these cards in their hand, they're not going to play. You can always discard them as they've just done there. So, be interested to see, which one they go for here. Falcon, there we go. Thank you, June. Yeah, so I think they'll probably look to play one of those. They will have to lay eggs at some point. So, maybe you get that Falcon down knowing that, okay, I want to at least give myself a chance of getting another point from that. When I do have to lay eggs. Like I said, they've got plenty of cards in their hand. They can always discard some of those for extra food if they need it. So it's not a terrible position to be in. Ooh, very nice tray.
Robin.
Yeah, that's what you want to see. It's exactly the point you were making earlier. When you draw lots of cards and they're not great, as long as you have something like a tuck and draw, you can make that work. And June going first in this second round. I'm all over that Robin. There's already a cherry in the feeder as well, so you can get that Robin down within a few turns, and suddenly you've got a 4 or 5 point grasslands where you're able to cycle through cards. It's just such a strong position to be in.
No doubt. Well, and they're going to pick up a couple additional cards this turn as well. So
exactly.
So they may only need to go to their wetlands once more for the rest of the game.
Yeah. And that's so crucial. If you can avoid spending those turns drawing cards, and you can instead spend those turns laying eggs or playing birds and actually scoring points, it's just going to help your score. So this feels like a really nice tray that's kind of saving June a bit here. They're able to build out that grasslands, and you kind of compare to what EnTaroAdun's got. They've got a nice start here in the forest, but certainly. They don't really have the big grassland engine birds that you'd look to build with. June's the one who's got hold of all of those at the moment.
Yeah, I think that Robin is a game changer, just because it's you look at, you're talking 17 more turns for the game, right? Even though it was kind of a slower start for June, but June's got 17 more turns left, and only one of them is going to be in the wetlands. So I think that Robin is massive.
Yeah, I think they potentially had a slightly slower start, as we saw. They spent 3 or 4 turns in that first round drawing cards, but as you said, if they can afford to spend maybe only one more turn in that wetlands, you look at their opponent who's only got 3 birds down and 3 in the hand. At most they're getting 2 cards a turn from their wetland. That's just more turns they're spending not scoring points. Absolutely. If June can look to get that Robin down now, I think it works with their bonus card as well. So that's a really nice pickup, and I think that really sets them up nicely. Getting that engine down and being able to get lots of points. I mean, we saw in the first 2 games they built some really nice grassland engines, so they definitely have the potential here to get another strong one going.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, they're looking at getting rid of the 10. I mean, what do you think about that versus getting rid of the flicker?
Yeah, it's an interesting decision. I don't know. Probably the Tannig is not something I would look to play. I think it is maybe going to be a bit too slow. I think if they've already got the rodent, they could probably look to get that kite down, as we talked about in the first round. But flicker, that kind of felt like the obvious discard for me. Probably not something you look to play. I mean, I know you look at the tray now, maybe it's going to reset, but I think I think they need that second forest bird really, because when you do have these tucking birds like the robin, you kind of want to avoid discarding cards in your forest for more food, because the more times they do that, the more times they have to go back to their wetlands, and like we said, they kind of need to avoid doing that as much as possible. So they can at least get the robin down, but yeah, I think that kite, I would expect that to follow pretty quickly in the forest. That just gives them access to more food.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they've got the one egg, so use the egg to get the robin down. Then then lay eggs. Trade out the flicker for something, and then get the kite down in the forest.
Ooh, what do you make of this? Wetland Phoebe? Don't see that too often.
No, well, I've heard a certain person say that a wetland Phoebe, it means a full tuck. So I've and obviously they're EnTaroAdun is not going full tuck here. So
no. As it's been pointed in the chat, I have played Wetland Phoebe before in a streamed game that I didn't go full tuck in. I don't know. I think they're probably cautious of going too grasslands heavy, and they needed that second wetland bird just to at least give them access to more cards. It's very unconventional though. You look at all these end of round goals and how many eggs they're going to need to meet those. And they've got nothing in their grassland, so the more turns you have to spend, only getting 2 eggs a turn, it's really slow. And you compare that to what June's going to have set up once they get this robin down. That's potentially 5 points. So yeah, it feels a little bit slow.
Well, yeah, and particularly, I mean, you look at the second end of round the Phoebe goes for, the third end of round the Phoebe goes for. I mean, you understand the play, but yeah, you think maybe put it in the grassland, and you can spend whatever excess food you're not using to grab that third egg until you get that built out.
Yeah. Now, what do you make of this? Looks like June's going for the kite first. I know we just discussed, you want to get that robin down first with the egg. It feels like a little bit, they're going to miss out on some points now because they will have to lay eggs anyway before they get that robin down. So yeah, what do you think is going through June's mind if they prioritise getting the kite down first?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of something, and
left you speechless.
Yeah. I mean, they already had the food for the kite, and they had the food for the robin. You put the robin down, you get 3 eggs, you get a tuck and cycle. And then you put the kite down next. So honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think maybe they're trying to do is get some more ground nests down. They've got the trumpeter swan, they've got the burrowing owl with the star nest. So maybe they're trying to compete with this end of round goal. But I just think at this point you don't want to get too hung up on these end of round goals. You're already 2 behind. You'd have to play 2 birds to even tie it, and it's only worth 3 points. Is it worth sacrificing all of this tempo and all of this engine building just to get those 3 points from the end of round goal? I would have to say probably not. So yeah, it feels a bit slow. They're going to have to lay eggs, and they're only going to get 2 or 3 points from that. When really it could have been 4 or 5 points if they had the robin down first. So yeah, little bit slow there, but hopefully they'll look to lay eggs next and really get that down as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think they still can compete for the end of round, just because even though EnTaroAdun's got those 3 ground nest birds, they still, as of right now, can only lay 2 eggs a turn. So
yeah,
potentially, depending on how it plays out, they could still sneak in there for an end of round. But
yeah, I think it's one of those where EnTaroAdun, they've got enough turns, so they can always leave themselves in a position of, okay, well, I'll make sure that I've got 2 ground nest birds with eggs in, and then if I have to lay eggs on that last one, I can. But certainly, if June is able to get down another bird, it will make EnTaroAdun maybe think a little bit more about what they have to do, because if they have to spend another turn laying eggs for 2 points instead of doing something stronger. It certainly is quite a slow process to be going through. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before when they put the Phoebe in the wetlands. So many eggs are going to be needed for these end of round goals. Even that next one, eggs in bowl nests. They've got so many more bowl nest spaces than June, but are they really going to lay eggs for 2 eggs a turn to get all those down? I highly doubt it.
Yeah, I mean I think they've got to basically get that grackle down in the grassland. At least that way they're getting some good points out of the turn, and maybe ditching some of these cards they're not necessarily going to play. But
yeah, it's an interesting decision on the grackle. I don't know. It almost feels a little bit too late to go for it in the wetlands, and certainly if you are, you look at some of these birds they got on their hand, you think, well, you're not going to play those at this point. You may as well tuck those and turn them into points. But yeah, it still feels a bit slow for EnTaroAdun. If they're only getting 2 cards a turn, and then they're going to be tucking those in the grasslands, where do the points come from? They're really going to have to gamble and try and get some big point birds from the deck. But when you're only seeing 3 a turn, it just doesn't leave you as many options.
Yeah, well, see, now here's where your buddy the Brant can help, because when you've got a tuck and lay bird like that, and not only do you get the Brant's only 3 points on its own, right? But it saves you a trip to the wetlands, and if you have a weaker wetlands like this, and then you can turn those cards into points.
Yeah, very good point. Even if you get 3 not so great birds from the Brant, like you say, each of those after getting a tuck and an egg is worth 2 points. So yeah, that's certainly a strong bird for them to play, and I think it might even meet their bonus cards. So yeah, certainly one I'd be looking to play. I think you make a really good point there for EnTaroAdun going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you do what? Get the grackle down, lay eggs, and then so then you're covered on the end of round, and then on the turnaround you get to go first and use the Brant if you want to, or you've got flexibility.
Interesting decision here for June. So they were thinking about going for the burrowing owl. I think that was maybe, like the point I was making before, if you can get that second nest down, it makes your opponent think a little bit harder. Now I think EnTaroAdun can get away with, they'll probably look to play that grackle as we mentioned, and then lay eggs. But yeah, certainly they kind of have this end of round goal in the bag. But yeah, I like what June's got set up now in their grasslands. I think it's just going to depend what they can get on the card cycle, because they've got nice food source. So yeah, they'll just have to tuck, and like they did in the first 2 games, hope they can get something nice on the deck, because yeah, the points at the moment are not really on the board for them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I try to keep in mind in my games, is that even if you don't intend to compete for an end of round, just the threat of it can change your opponent's actions, right? If you've got, if they know, well, he can actually compete and potentially tie me on this, I might do something out of sequence. Whereas if you telegraph essentially, I can't really compete for this, now you allow your opponent to play more optimally.
Yeah, and it's certainly true in 1v1 games like this. Every point in an end of round goal that you lose is a point that your opponent's gaining. So it's if you can make them make that difficult decision and have to take an inefficient turn just to score something they were hoping to score anyway, then yeah, you can end up slowing your opponent down a little bit. But yeah, I don't mind what June's done with the Robin. I think they did really need to get that down sooner rather than later. I'll be interested to see if they play this hummingbird that they picked up on the last round. They have already got quite a lot of food and easy access from the forest, and sometimes you want to be careful about giving too much food to your opponent. But would you look to play the hummingbird in this position?
Well, I think the hummingbird could be a valuable bird in terms of just helping you get to that point in your grasslands where you can lay 4 eggs. Plus, it goes to the third end of round. Plus, it goes to their bonus card. So I think kind of the combination of all those things, even if you don't plan to activate it, which maybe they do, maybe they don't. But even if they don't plan to activate it or to activate it very much, I think it still provides enough value in those other ways. Plus, it's so cheap to get down that I think the combination of all those factors, I think it does make sense.
Yeah, you make a good point. It synergizes really nicely with the end of round goal and the bonus, and it's 4 points for any food. You know, if you can get these birds down and really just build something out in that grasslands, you know, like you say, the more birds they get down, the more points they get from laying eggs. So yeah, I think it makes sense for them to try and get this down. They have got the food for the burrowing owl as well, so they might look to add to that. But you know, at some point they will probably have to take that last turn drawing cards, and I think the decision for them at this point is, do I do that before I've played the swan and maybe even the heron as well, or do I try and get those down now so that when I do draw cards I at least get an extra one for tucking under the robin?
Right, and I think you know, in this instance, right, with so many turns left to go in this round, I think you're better off kind of getting your draw in sooner, because, you know, all else equal, you would rather know sooner rather than later which birds you intend to play.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's definitely an advantage to to doing what they're doing here, which is allowing themselves to draw as many cards as possible, and then he's probably looking at, okay, let's get the hummingbird down with the grub, and then or let's draw cards, let's get the hummingbird down with the grub, and then let's run that grassland to pick up the additional grub for the owl.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, we do see a grub in the feeder, so if they are able to get that hummingbird down, and hopefully draw some nice cards from the deck. But even if they don't, there's still plenty of this game left to cycle through that robin, and hopefully get some nice cards from that. So yeah, I think that's certainly a good option for June at this point. But yeah, so we see on EnTaroAdun's side, they did pick up the Meadowlark, I think, on their last turn. So that's a nice option, I think, for their grasslands. You know, that grasslands is potentially, you look at 7 points if you're able to get the egg spaces. So that's a nice option. So it's a bit of a weak card at this point. It's only 2 points, but if they can justify it by spending enough turns laying eggs in that grasslands, then I think potentially they can look to make it work.
Yeah, well, anytime, I mean, it does get them 7 gross points, but anytime you've got one of those birds that also benefits your opponent, you've got to look at net. So it's a 6 point.
Yeah.
It's really a 6 point net, but which is still very strong. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, I think it's at this point of the game where you kind of look at it and you think, okay, how many times am I going to activate it? You know, if I'm activating it 3 times, it's going to get me 3 points, like you say. You know, you get 6 eggs, but your opponent's getting 3. Is that worth playing instead of the woodcock? You know, the woodcock on its own, I know it's an extra food, but it's 7 more points. So, if you're not actually going to activate the Meadowlark that much, just because there's not enough turns left, it might be a situation where actually I'd rather just get the points down on the board. They've got a couple of those big point birds. They've got the thrush as well, which they've got food for. So I think they could potentially look to get both those down. They've still got the brant that they can use to get more cards, and hopefully just tuck any others that they don't like behind that grapple and get even more points. Yeah,
and unfortunately, the way that things have shaped up, it's they're looking at bricking out that bonus card. I mean, they've only got 1 large bird down right now in the turn, and the brant is the only other one, and there's really nothing worth taking for them. So
no, and you need 4 to even meet the lower threshold of that. So to try and force play 2 more just to get 3 points, unless they're really nice birds, I don't think that's the kind of thing that you'd be looking to do. So it's unfortunate, and certainly you look at JunePaik's bonus card as well, and you think, well, they've only got 1 bolt nest out of 4. Okay, maybe they're going to get some starbirds down, but I'm not sure if they've even got enough turns left either. So we could well see both players completely brooking out on bonus cards, which it's at least even in that perspective. Okay, so they have gone Meadowlark. So clearly they feel confident in the egg spaces they've got, that they can afford to run that for enough turns. But yeah, they will have to be mindful of, okay, how many of these am I giving to my opponent? You look at June's board and they've got 6 ground nest spaces, so they are surely not going to run out of those anytime soon. They get plenty of eggs themselves from their own grass, and so yeah, you've got to be careful. You don't want to give too much away to your opponent like that.
Yeah. Now, one thing, it was nice that they were able to pair the Meadowlark with the Bluebird, because all of a sudden, that 1 point play that only advances you 1 spot becomes a 4 point play that advances you 2. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they've still got the Mockingbirds that potentially they might look to play. I mean, that could well be overkill. If you're copying that Meadowlark, you're gonna run out of those egg spaces even quickly. But yeah, with only a few turns left, they could easily get that down and still have enough space to not run out. But yeah, be an interesting decision what they do tuck here, because it's going to be something that you're not going to want to tuck that Brant. You want to get that down really to help you get more cards to tuck.
Yeah, now that Mockingbird in the grassland is interesting, because, like you say, they can run it with the Meadowlark, and so long as it's beneficial. But then they can also turn around and use it for the Grackle as well, so that a turn for them going to their wetlands, becomes a 4 point turn by taking those 2 cards and being able to tuck and lay on the Grackle. So
yeah, it's a good point. They might they play the Brant, they'll have 5 cards in their hand. Even that alone isn't. They're gonna come short on that Grackle. Even if they don't get the Mockingbird down and copy it. So I'd imagine probably at least 1 more turn drawing cards. And if you've got excess cards, you want to be using this to tuck behind the Grackle. The only thing they will have to be careful about is the egg space, because it does only have 3 spots, so they're going to need to clear those out by playing more birds. And other than the Woodcock, they don't really have many options. And certainly none of the birds in the tray is anything you'd look to get down. So it's a tricky situation, I think, at the moment for EnTaroAdun.
No doubt.
Things seem a bit simpler for June, I think, here. They're kind of done as we predicted. Get the Hummingbird down, go for the eggs, get the grub. So yeah, they can get that 4th grassland bird down in the Burrowing Owl, and that's a nice position for them to be in. That grassland is suddenly, most likely it's going to be 6 or 7 points plus the food plus the card cycle. And we saw this in the other games. They've come back strong with nice engines, big point scoring engines at the end. So I think if they can get some nice cards from the tuck, they've already got the Whooping Crate in their hand. So again, it could come down to a late bonus card draw. But I think they have some nice options, and just see what they get from the deck.
Yeah, no doubt. You figure, I mean, okay, they've got 9 birds down now and 4 in their hand, so they've got plenty of cards to cycle through.
Yeah, I think you look at EnTaroAdun's position and you think, okay, they get way more points from their grasslands. If they're going to copy this Meadowlark, that's 10 points they're getting, assuming that they use the tuck on the Grackle as well, which is massive. But realistically, how many times are they going to run that? You're going to need to go for cards at some point. They're already skipping the Grackle. Presumably they want to get that Woodcock down, but that Brant, that's only 2 points for that 1 turn. If they have to draw cards again, that's 0 points for that turn. So you might score 10 points every other turn, but if you're scoring 0 points on the opposite turns, it's not competing with your opponent who's scoring 6 or 7 points every turn and potentially picking up stronger cards in the meantime. So it's a tricky one to call. It kind of feels like June is in the stronger position, but you look at the end of round goals, you think those are so crucial in a 2-player game like this, and EnTaroAdun does seem to have the edge on those. So it's going to be a close one, I feel.
Yeah, now we're skipping an important thing in the chat here, which is why dried potatoes in Pringles. Why is that the?
I've been strategically avoiding that chat for as long as possible. So.
And I think you're the wiser man for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we don't need any Pringles conspiracies in here. We've got a thrilling game of Wingspan to watch. So I will leave the Pringles chat to those who are interested, but. I'm gonna keep focusing on the game because I think it's gonna be a difficult one. It's gonna be a difficult one to call just in terms of who's gonna edge this. I think if June can get a nice draw from the Robin, certainly they'll get enough food from their Hummingbird. But it's all gonna depend on that tray next round because whatever's there is probably what EnTaroAdun is going to be picking up with that brand.
No doubt. I will say one other thing about Pringles. My favorite thing about Pringles, which is the subject of a Mitch Hedberg joke, in which he says he thinks that Pringles' initial intention was to make tennis balls, but then on the day that the potatoes were supposed to show up, it was or on the day that the tennis balls were supposed to show up, a truckload of potatoes arrived and Pringles was laid back. It was just like, cut them up, man.
Yeah, that was just making the best of the situation they had.
That's right.
We've already got all these tubes. We may as well put something in them.
That's perfect. Yep.
Right.
I should have stuck to Wingspan.
You should have done. Nothing great in the tray. Obviously, June is going first, but I can't see them taking any of those birds. So maybe the Grosbeak, 6 points, and it helps fulfill their bonus card, and it's another bird in the forest. They might look at that, but if they're going to look at that, they're sacrificing the whooping crate. So it's a difficult one. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, because that would fill their bonus card, right? Give them the minimum on that. Yeah, so that Grosbeak is on its own is 6 plus the 4 for the bonus card minus the egg is a 9-point play, and the crane after you net the eggs is a 4-point play. So you'd need a 5-point offset from the bonus card there. Plus, if it you could add an additional 3 points to the Grosbeak if it wins you or ties you the end of round. So.
Yeah, well, it looks like that's what they are going for. They do have the chat as well in their hand, which is another bowl nest. But it's just that one fewer point and no seeds in the feeder. But I don't think they'll have any problem getting enough food. They can always go 2 for 1 and force that Grosbeak down. So I don't mind that from June. I would imagine that we're going to see this woodcock go down in the forest anyway from EnTaroAdun, but you're still going to be tying that now instead of losing, which is still worth those 3 points. So. Grosbeak still is going to be a strong play here for June.
Yeah, I mean, you go, you lay eggs 2 more times, get the food you need for the Grosbeak, play the Grosbeak, and then, lay eggs again, because you're looking anywhere from, minimum 5 to maximum 7 on that, grassland.
Yeah, it's an interesting play from EnTaroAdun there. So they went for the woodcock first. Now, it's a bit of a gamble because they don't have the food to play that brand. So they're going to be gambling that June is going to give them food from the Hummingbird. Now, knowing what we know, I would imagine that June is going to activate that Hummingbird. But it is a gamble because if they don't get that food, you can't play the brand. I can't imagine they're going to go for food themselves. So you leave yourself, laying eggs and not getting that tuck. So I feel like the play there would certainly have been play the brand first and be sure you're getting these cards and you can always get that food from the Hummingbird on a later turn. So a little bit of a gamble, but as we see with the Hummingbirds, it's not going to affect them at all here because they'll still be able to get the brand down.
Yeah, so what have we got here for... Oh, interesting. Now, see... Now the the chat does the same thing for June as the Grosbeak minus a point, but they've already got the food for the chat. So I'm not sure. Although what they could do, they could play the chat. They could play the chat in the wetlands, and then let's see if they ran the wetlands, take food, run it. I don't know. Probably still makes more sense to play the Grosbeak, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you make a good point. They can't afford to skip that. I'm just trying to work out from EnTaroAdun side if they've got enough egg space to lay eggs 3 times. We've talked about it before. If they're copying that meadowlark and getting the tuck on the grackle, that's 9 eggs a turn. They've only got 20 spaces, so that's only enough for doing less than 7 a turn. So they're really going to miss out here on some eggs. Unless they can get one of these birds down, but even the birds they've got is only 3 points a bird, so feels like really some missed efficiency here, potentially at the end of the game here for EnTaroAdun.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, I mean, if you're EnTaroAdun, you want to be looking at, minding June's egg spaces and keeping an eye on that for your hummingbird or for your meadowlark activation. Because it's still, I mean, even if you don't activate the meadowlark, it's still a 6-point grassland, which is, fine.
It is. Yeah, it's fine, but it's fine enough. June has consistently been getting 6 or 7 points from this grassland, while also getting food, and having that Grosbeak to play and for a big point turn at the end. Whereas in EnTaroAdun, they had to spend a turn playing the Brant for basically 1 point, or 2 points, I should say. So it's a weaker turn there, and really it's only worth doing that if you're able to unlock these 9-point turns consistently. But they are going to miss out on some egg spaces here. I just don't know if it's going to cost them, because if you can still max out those 31 eggs, it's such a strong position. But if June can really max out their eggs after they've got this Grosbeak down as well, they're still looking at a strong total, and they've got all these tuck cards as well. So it's a really tricky one. I again, like game 1, it's difficult to know which way this is going to go.
Yes, I mean June is looking at. Okay, you spent those eggs. June will have plenty of egg space. They'll be able to fill it up, I think, almost perfectly, or maybe perfectly.
Yeah, I think June will be a couple of eggs short, but that's not a bad thing. They're still going to get like mid-20s, I think. Yeah, they'll get to 25. So yeah, I think they're certainly looking at a really strong score, like in the 90s or maybe even into the hundreds. I'd look at EnTaroAdun's board and think, okay, you've got 30 points from eggs, but you've only got 2 nice birds down. You got nothing from your bonus card. I don't really see where the points are coming from, if I'm honest, from their board at the moment. So it feels like it's going to be a close one, but I'd probably give the edge to June just at the moment, from what we can see on the board at least.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I agree with that with EnTaroAdun. I was just going to ask, like, if you're going to fill up on eggs anyway, why are you activating the meadowlark? Yeah,
it's a good point, because those 2 egg spaces that June would have had free, if you're activating the meadowlark twice, you're filling them up perfectly. And I think that's one thing June has done really nicely in this last round. They had enough spaces on those bolt nests, but they've managed the eggs well. They've laid them in the right nest. When they played the Grosbeak, they made sure to discard from the right nest, so they've always had space. And even laying eggs here, they can fill up the Grosbeak and the Robin, if they're smart about it. There you go. So if they do still get another free egg from the meadowlark, there's a space on the Merganser for that. So I think they've played this last round really nicely, and it was a feature of their first game as well. That final round for June was so strong, and it's what I think ended up winning in the game. So if they do win this game, I think again they can look to this last round that they've got from their grasslands and think, yeah, I've set this up really nicely and maximise the points I could get.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was definitely a very well played match all around. You know, it's hard to see a whole lot of huge mistakes from anybody.
All right, moment of truth. As the scores are going to count up, this is the deciding game 3, and winner will go through into the semi-final. So a lot is riding on what the scores are here.
To play you.
To play me, indeed. So
dun
yeah.
dun dun.
Dun dun dun. So EnTaroAdun is going to have more eggs here, but I think June is going to come back with the tuck cards. And there we go. June does take it 100-93.
Nice.
So very well played there, again, from both players. Really strong scores. You know, when you both see both players scoring above 90 in a game like that, when there's a lot on the line, I think well played from both, and yeah, strong scores. But congratulations to June, who does advance through into the semi-final. I'm already looking forward to that match, so that should be a good one.